Welcome to No CB, a grand strategy podcast. This is for the week of the 15th of September, 2021. I'm Len. I'm your host. We have our awesome panelists here today, including Rose.
Hello.
And including Father Loris.
Hello.
And Lambert's off doing some kind of Steam stream where it's a mystery. We're not
Lambert's
sure.
just had excessive cosmetic surgery today.
And we're also joined today by the new game director for Hearts of Iron 4, who you may know from previously working on Imperator Rome, Peter /Arheo.
Greetings. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think this is your third time on the show.
It is, and it's always a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Same for us.
Flattery will get you nowhere, sir.
That's what they all say.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
It'll get you a long way. That's the secret.
Yeah.
Just praise Loris's artwork and you're good.
Perfect.
Everybody knows that works on us. So we're going to have our main topic this week is going to be Hearts of Iron. So we're going to have that at the back half of the show. And we'll start with one little piece of non-Paradox news this week, which is that Games Workshop and Creative Assembly have finally unveiled the Grand Cathay faction that is going to be appearing both in the Old World tabletop game and in Total War Warhammer 3. And Loris, I think we're both kind of in agreement that this is like way cooler than we expected it was going to be.
I was shocked how very much on the mark it's been, actually. Quite worried for all sorts of reasons, but it's hit that real sweet spot of Warhammer Fantasy where it's like grounded but ridiculous and cheesy and
right. Like it's not like offensive stereotypes, but it's fantasy China in the same way that the Empire is fantasy Germany. Yeah. Like it's
it's built on like cheesy cliches, which is great.
Right.
Which is what Warhammer is all basically, like a Bretonia. Like Bretonia is like the cheesiest cliché place.
It's basically Monty Python and the Holy Grail as a faction.
Yeah. This is basically Monty Python-esque China, which is great.
So they've got giant terracotta warriors. Their leaders are actual dragons. They've got all kinds of gunpowder, crossbows. They have like these flying units that are like Chinese lantern hot air balloons, basically. And then we didn't get a full roster reveal, but they also supposedly have their own lores of magic, which are yin and yang, which is kind of cool.
They had like a little bit in the trailer. I wasn't quite sure if it was like an attack move, but there was some sort of weird calligraphy ink coming off like one hero, which was interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
Again, cheesy, love it. Some sort of calligraphy magic is just great. It's not something I'd even think about. It's like they've gone through something. It's sort of what's China, what are the great cultural markers of China that the Chinese are proud of and everything, and make that into something cool, like and a bit cheesy and a bit silly. Prime example being the Chinese lantern airships, which look incredible. They're wonderful. Like how ingenious is that? It's wonderful.
That says they're going to focus a lot on discipline and on being a strong defensive infantry army, which seems to fit thematically with how they're sort of positioned. They're going to have campaign, or one of their two leaders, the one they showed in the trailer, is going to have the Great Bastion as a campaign mechanic, which is like Warhammer's version of the Great Wall of China. And reinforcing that is going to be a big part of their campaign gameplay. It looks like they have. Is it a Quillen? Is that how you pronounce it? Is like their winged cavalry?
I'm not quite sure,
maybe.
Actually.
Yeah.
And they got big terracotta constructs too. Pretty great.
Oh yeah. They've
got this like weird jade orb, I guess. But
Yeah, I don't know what that
kind of looks
does.
like a corpse cart, I guess. Maybe it has like a similar healing aura around people or a buff. Be pretty cool.
I don't know. Yeah. But then also in a lot of these screenshots in the trailer, we also got our first look at the Zinch faction.
Yes, yeah,
And they
yeah,
have
yeah.
their floating hoverboard discs and stuff, which is pretty awesome. So yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, there's like flamers too. What's it called? Are they purple horrors and blue horrors? I think they're called.
I don't know the names of all of the demons super well in Warhammer, but yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You were talking a bit before the show, I guess, that you're more of a 40k man, more than a fantasy, I guess.
I am, but I've got to say, my question about Grand Cathay, at least, is can it live up to the trailer? Can the faction actually live up to that trailer? Because it was fantastic.
Yes, right?
Yeah, the trailer was incredible. I
think the proof in the pudding will be like when we hear more about like how sieges work, I guess.
Right.
Because I feel like Cathay has to be like defensive and all about the castles and holding the line, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because that kind of like ultra cinematic stuff, you don't necessarily see it all the time in Total War Warhammer, but you definitely do see it in like the preview battle I played with like the Realm of Chaos. The one that you might have seen some streamers play where it's Kislev versus Khorne. Like that battle felt like what this trailer looks like. So I'm hoping we get more of that.
It was I think I was thinking about it, actually, because in the you think of like the good like anti-chaos factions, they're all quite defensive. They play quite defensively, right?
Right, yeah.
And Cathay is obviously no exception to that.
Right.
And then thinking about, as you're raiding the chaos places, it's sort of a tiered assault, right? You go up, you secure a position, and you push forward and secure another position, which suits all of the good factions, basically. And I think if Cathay can be a good defensive, it'll feel good to hold the line as Cathay. I think it'll really work. So
yeah, for sure. Well, we have a lot of news to cover, but they're probably going to post a roster reveal next week, so we can talk some more about this then. So we'll move on to our first little bit of paradox news this week. Which you're not excused. Get off the show.
Sorry. I just haven't been smoking enough cigarettes. My lungs are a little bit too clean.
Oh yeah, it's like your lungs are so used to having.
We do have Lord Lambert in chat, by the way.
Lambert's
and he is saying they could re-release Warhammer 2 tomorrow with just decent sieges, and he would pay full price.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's what everyone's looking forward to, like just a siege rework, which is, I think they've said they're reworking sieges in some way. Or
we're supposed to hear more about that. So, yeah. So Victoria 3 this week, we got to look at political movements, which is one of the first features that I don't think we've seen anywhere previously. No previews and no trailers have mentioned it.
Yeah.
Which from what it seems like these are like separate from the goals that your interest groups have, but they can kind of tie into that. Like they arise based on the conditions in your country. And I know you're probably not allowed to talk much about it, Peter, but do you get a chance to play Victoria 3 much in the office?
Well, you're right on both counts. I can't say much about it, but I can just boot up the game and play it whenever I want.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
but I've played it a little bit, but I'm mostly waiting for the release. I think it's a lot more fun to do that. I generally all the releases from Paradox. I used to be a fan before I joined, so I still get a kick out of the hype surrounding releases.
I think I've had a couple other devs say that, like they'll boot it up beforehand, but it feels too much like work playing it before it's actually done.
Yeah, it does.
So
some really cool, interesting stuff, right? I mean,
right.
So movements to preserve is a new thing.
Movements to preserve and movements to restore, which is interesting because like reactionary, like there were kind of reactionaries in Victoria too, but they didn't really model reactionary movements, especially like that wanted to push things back towards the way they used to be. I mean, there were certain political parties, but they always wanted the same thing. So it was like, it was modeled in that way that like, oh, if you got rid of, if you got rid of a certain law, then a political party that wanted that law would want you to bring it back. But this is like, this can directly react to your decisions, which is, cool. That's why they're called reactionaries. They react to things.
And
they react when you try to give people rights and be like, wait, but we used to have more rights than them. Why do they have the same rights as us now?
It's a good example of a thing to preserve, which is obviously the monarchy, right? Which Europe is filled with monarchies, and they still find significant amounts to support, I guess. And so there's amount of, so the example used here was Sweden's monarchy, right? So there's a high support for presuming monarchy, and I presume it's going to be also the same in other European monarchies too. There's going to be
right.
So if you're going to go down the route of trying to establish a liberal republic, you're going to come up against quite hefty support for a monarchy, which you wouldn't have seen in Victoria too, right? Like, you don't get people who want to just restore the monarchy. Like, the monarchy.
Well, and especially, modeling countries that are like very socially progressive but still have strong support for the monarchy. Wasn't really. I mean, Victoria too kind of modeled it, but
this I feel is just making it more true to life, because no matter how much the majority may want something, there's always going to be others, a minority, that don't want it.
Yeah.
Right. And also political movements, while they do get some support from interest groups, they also draw support directly from just like the flat amount of population that supports them.
Yeah.
So even if you have officially disenfranchised a large group of people, they can still lend their full support to an interest group, even if they wouldn't be able to lend their much support to a movement. I'm sorry. They can lend their full support to a political movement, even if their say as an interest group would be very small. So.
Yeah, so you can imagine somebody like maybe interest groups not supporting, as an example here, I guess, about poll tax. But, you'll have a lot of people who suffer from the poll tax disproportionately, who might not be part of an interest group that opposes a poll tax, but would support it nonetheless, right? From just the economic interest of not wanting to pay as much tax.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. And I also touched a little bit on if you don't appease people politically, I guess, can start radicalizing ops. And there's a number of ways that radicalization can happen, right?
Yeah, and this was sort of one of the things I was like raising my eyebrow a little bit when I saw the first build of the first press preview video, whatever, of Victoria 3, is the fact that there's no stat for consciousness. And basically the way they've replaced that is that pops, I think, that are more literate, that are discriminated against, are more likely to radicalize.
Because they have access to all that dangerous information.
Exactly. So they are sort of modeling class consciousness to a degree, even though it's not a number that is called consciousness. So I'm interested to see how that'll work. I'm interested to see if it'll still apply to non-discriminated groups like the white working class in the US, if they get more likely to radicalize as they become more literate, because that's also a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Well, it's this. Yeah, that's a thing. But then there's also pops from political movements whose demands are ignored. So let's say it's the urban versus rural, and the people in power supporting the urbanites. The rural people, I would assume, if their demands are getting ignored constantly, will
radicalize. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's how it'll work. Yeah.
Another interesting aspect I've found is so if your pops are not getting their basic needs, they obviously radicalize. But a more interesting thing for me is if their material living standards have gone up, they de-radicalize. But if they go down again, they radicalize. So really, you could, in a situation, get somebody who is living a much higher standard of living, say if you just made a conquest of the colony and your economy has gone up a little bit, they'll expect a higher standard of living. If that goes down in any way, even if they are getting all their base needs, they're still going to radicalize because their standard of living relatively has gone down. So
so you don't want to get people used to too high of a standard of living if it's not sustainable.
Exactly, right.
Also, the fact that pops actually die in real time, like individual people actually die in real time now is, they've talked a little bit about this before, but it can create like a generation who grew up with prosperity that are all loyalists, but then they die, and the new generation doesn't really care because you haven't done anything for them. Which is a sentiment I relate to. Being someone who's
really
born
real politics with this. Let's maybe not.
There's an interesting thing, I guess. What I was thinking of, like, so say if you're supplying a lot of luxury goods to, I don't know, say working class Brits get a lot of tea, for example, and then the supply of tea goes down. Those working class Brits will radicalize, despite the fact that tea is a luxury good, but they're used to having a very high standard of tea being imported to the country, and if they see that,
we used to have our tea.
Exactly, it makes sense. It's cool.
You need except you didn't have pretty little tea bags back then.
Oh, they had back then. Actually.
I do like those like loose sleeve tea diffusers. Those are nice.
I've got a cute little one that's a puppy dog.
Nice.
Just easier.
I'm scum, so I don't actually. I just have tea bags.
Rose, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, if you deny people your tea, you could end up like this dude. Good old George III.
Yeah, that could happen. Well, if you have some unruly radical pops, and you're, say, a medieval lord, Rose, what might you be able to do to entertain them and keep them from rebelling against you?
Make sure they have a very entertaining court jester.
All right, and that is the topic of this week's Crusader Kings 3 Dev Diary.
Yes, we are getting court positions back, which is quite lovely, except like everything else that they've brought from CK2 over to CK3, they've expanded upon it. So in CK2, you could give out court positions, and really the only reason to do that was you got a little bit of opinion modifier, and it was kind of nice because also if you gave it to your heir, because depending on the position, your heir might get a little bit of prestige and a little bit of money that they'll stockpile for when you start playing them, which can make things easier. But now they're going to become more important. They didn't list every type of court position that's going to come to the game. The court positions also will be part of the free patch, not the Royal Court DLC.
I think they said some of them will be DLC, but the basic ones will be.
And also some will be locked behind certain cultural traditions or government types. Like if you're an emperor, you may have access to some that you don't have access to as a duke. Because the duke just doesn't need them.
Yeah, we got an example here of the garden architects, where that's a cultural tradition, where you can have a court gardener. Which makes me think, what culture would be garden architects, you know? Like, be interesting. Which, trying to think of a culture that is, like, known for its gardens. And it's quite tough, because everyone has gardens, right? So, like...
Yeah, I don't know. Some of these might not even be, like, starter cultures. Some of them might just be things you can pick when you create a new culture.
I see the thing is, like, the garden architects is, like, everyone would have a garden, but it might not be important enough to have someone named from your court.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you've got a gardener, but that's just, Billy Bob, who grew up down the road in the village and is good with plants.
Oh, I tell you what, actually, thinking about it, because during this period, isn't it, like, you didn't have really big gardens in medieval Europe much, but thinking of Morocco, for example, Morocco, had huge gardens. There's a lot of, big Arabic speaking places that were renowned for their gardens. I mean, European gardens sort of came in later, I guess, in EU4's time period.
Yeah, quite. And even the gardens in Europe tended to be medicinal and food, and they were working gardens, not pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm also going to jump back in time a second. Lord Lambert is freaking out in chat going, why do I have a picture of George III? This is a deck of cards with all the British monarchs from 1066 onwards, including Elizabeth II looks very young here. So that's why it was just on my desk.
From 1066 onwards, so all the illegitimate ones.
Tudors number one.
Yeah, there's also a lot of new ways you can get assassinated now.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you have bodyguards. Everyone can have 2 bodyguards, though they do confirm in the comments, the devs do, that you can mod in more.
Right, which is nice because, yeah, sometimes I would love to just be able to give a bodyguard to my heir so that, like, if they have 27 martial, I can use them as a general without the chance that they're, like, going to die in battle and their, like, idiot brother is going to end up being being the heir. So, yeah, I like that a lot. But also they get bonus in hostile schemes against you, as does the physician, as does the food taster. So if you get those 4 people on your side, plus like the spy master and the spouse, like then, you know, you're in business.
Yeah, you have a proper Praetorian Guard situation happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
some people like 7 bodyguards.
Yeah, they're kind of expensive, especially for new players. Like, the bodyguards are 0.62 a month.
Which, speaking of money, they made it so that the court physician is now part of these court positions, but the physician is still cheaper than the other ones because they want everyone to be able to afford a doctor.
See, I might mod that out because I think, yeah, if you can't afford a doctor, it's the Middle Ages. You died of gout. Too bad. Not everybody can afford a doctor.
I feel like you should always be able to appoint a doctor, but if you want one that's actually competent, they have to cost the same as the other slots. But if you want just, Sally Smith from the village who, mixes dung with, I don't know, dead fleas to cure you of gout, then you can get her for a pittance.
You're talking about my local GP.
They'll just give you the horse medicine. That'll work. I think they said that they experimented with trying to make the cost scale with the skill of the person in the position, but there were some balance issues with that or something.
I was thinking about that, if that would be better. If you had a really high quality physician, I imagine I would command a better wage than Sally with her dung remedies,
Yeah,
This is now an anti-Sally podcast.
Sally. Oh, what a loser.
Sorry, Sally.
And then of course we get some jester clothes, which is essential.
They look very
yes.
I'm curious how many different cultural versions of the jester we'll have, or if it'll just look like this everywhere. But
I would hope we get cultural ones.
Yeah. I don't even know. Like, did like the Muslim world have a version of a court jester? I know they had a lot of court entertainers, but I don't know if they had a guy who was just like a goofy, like, clown, basically.
I don't know.
Oh, and one thing is, if you are a player, another player can appoint you as, you can be appointed to one of these court positions as the player character, which means even in multiplayer, you can guarantee someone gets part of your money.
Yeah.
Which could be interesting if you're playing as a liege and a vassal in multiplayer and someone says, hey, okay, I will support you and stay with you, but you have to keep putting me in one of these court positions with a good amount of cash coming in.
Yeah,
I'm curious if you could be someone else's bodyguard and that'll give you the choice to like save them or save yourself.
Yeah.
I would assume that we can't be bodyguards because they do say that some positions are not available if you're landed and some positions are not available if you're landless, and some are available to both, but you really don't want to put your duke as your court jester because he might be a little upset with you.
I
hope he can be a physician, but I always wanted to do events where I'm doing surgery on someone. Right? Cool.
Or do surgery on yourself, even better.
Yeah. Have you been? You've got a character in game, haven't you? Or is it not been
in
yet?
CK? No, I don't.
Not yet.
No, only in Imperator.
I have to get that in, right? I mean,
come on.
Get it in before the patch, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, one country that probably won't have a lot of time filling their court with interesting characters in the next EU4 update is Songhai.
Yeah.
Who were they were sort of the winners of West Africa in this time period. So they sort of supplanted Mali as the great empire in the sub-Saharan West Africa. So they're getting a pretty cool mission tree where my favorite part of it is you can basically choose to convert, or you can choose to tolerate the pagans until you actually get the option to convert back to fetishist, or basically make it a secondary religion, which is kind of cool.
I wonder how the secondary religion mechanic works in question.
I think it's probably just going to be like a modifier on your government screen. But yeah, it's +10 improved relations efficiency. And then every fetishist province gets prosperity growth, -2 missionary strength, and it does not count towards religious unity.
Yeah.
So you could technically conquer like all of Africa, and as long as it's all Sunni or fetishist, you'll be at 100% religious unity, which seems pretty powerful.
Oh no, it's anything that's not Muslim, basically. Isn't it? If you get the guaranteed traditions, double check.
I'm looking at the Roots of Songhai event, where it says Songhai gets fetishist secondary religion. Every owned fetishist province.
No, I see. Okay, now I'm looking at the guaranteed traditions privilege, I guess. Which.
Oh yeah, that's a separate thing. Which is also very powerful.
What I'm most excited about with this level is the corrections to stuff with Mali. I had some issues with it last week, and I think they've pretty much addressed every single one, and I really quite like it now, actually. It's pretty good.
Yeah, Mali is not completely ridiculous anymore. They changed it to like -75% gold mine depletion cost and -75% inflation.
Yeah.
And then when you go on the pilgrimage, you can impose an inflation penalty on the countries that you go through if they accept your gifts. Mm-hmm. But they also have the choice not to do that, and you can't crash the economy of an entire continent by clicking one button. Which was cool, honestly. Like, part of me liked that, but they said, does it belong in the base game? And I kind of see that. Like, that'd be something I'd expect to be able to do in Onbanar, maybe. But.
Yes. Yeah,
it's quite nice to see Central Africa interacting outside of Central Africa, though.
Yes,
for
definitely.
Sure. I like that they get those options, and I think Mali even has a colonization mission now too, right? Don't they? One of them does.
But in general, seeing this area with a lot more missions is pretty exciting. I think it's starting up the game and thinking, where shall I play now? Africa is always this big blob in the center of your screen that you think there's no real content here yet. So being able to actually interact with it again, I think, is great.
Yeah, it's a really interesting
far too many hours in this game, so I'm like desperate for more missions and more.
Same. I've become just an Ambernar addict, pretty much. Yeah. That's pretty much
it. These two, and plus Lambert, could spend an hour, 2, 3 talking Ambernar.
Yeah, we'll do like.
I think they have in the past.
Show,
yeah. I mean, like, I'm really excited about this Mali stuff. I think, like you said, this is a great way of them interacting outside. Maybe not directly, but I guess indirectly. This was something that significant, like his Mansa Musa's pilgrimage was quite a significant event, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to see that in game in not a ridiculous way, but now it's pretty cool. And I certainly, if Mansa Musa came to my country, decided to give me money and those bonuses, I'll go, yeah, I'll take that inflation. Pretty good.
You could hire an advisor to offset that. It's not that big.
Exactly. But most of all, I'm still hoping they'll add a malaria mechanic. I'm still hoping for that in the future thing, because it's quite a big deal in Africa.
For sure.
Chocolate.
Well, the other really interesting thing is Johan actually posted a much more detailed explanation about why they're not going to add any more provinces to EU4. He mentioned save game compatibility last week, which I was like, I don't feel like that's that big an issue. I know that you guys have access to metrics that we don't have, and he said it was a major pet factor in people leaving EU4 due to their campaigns permanently breaking. I feel like those people just need to learn how to roll back versions. But I can see if people aren't doing it, like, and you have metrics that show that they're not like understanding how to do that, that could be a problem. But the other big one was performance, which I have noticed, especially in like the late, like 1750 onward. He mentioned that every time they add a province, it has an effect on performance. And if they had it to do over again, they should have kept it under 3,000, because even with the new stuff that was added in Emperor, it has had like a point of no return, he calls it, effect on performance.
Yeah.
So, and also mentioning this is the longest supported game in the history of Paradox. A lot of this code was, written in
Stone
like
Ages.
2006 or even earlier. Some of the stuff that was ported over from EU3.
Because this only came out a year after CK2.
Yeah. So it's, it's kind of amazing that they've added so much to it and that it's still
holds up,
working relatively well after 5 minor patches this most recent time. But the fact that it's still pretty playable, the code base is bending under its own weight, but it's still holding up.
Yeah.
So
This is
the
the old
one
one.
area,
I guess this is something you have to struggle too with Hearts of Iron. I guess it's Hearts of Iron runs on the same old, but the engine before CK3 is, I forgot my name of it.
Yeah,
now.
performance is a permanent concern, I think, and everything that you add has a linear increase in performance, sometimes even multiplicative.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this is a much better explanation. Some people in the comments were mentioning like changing borders or like redistributing provinces could be a way to do this. I think someone had a really good suggestion that like if you turned some of the Andes into like impassable mountain terrain and then move those provinces elsewhere in South America, that could be one way to do it. Because I do feel like that's the one area of the map that like if you were going to add more provinces, that's where it would make the most sense is South America. It's the least touched area of the map in EU4 for sure. Trans-Andean South America, I should say. Everything except the Andes. I would still hope to see that get touched. He also says there's like 3 more regions they want to touch up before this phase of development at least is done. So West Africa is one. I'm curious what the others will be. I know the ball. Yeah, yeah. China would be the Father Loris way to do it. That's all the 4 news for this week. We also finally got patch notes for Stellaris 3.1, which we're not going to go into a ton of detail on because we've kind of discussed all of these individually in their own dev diaries.
Mm-hmm.
But there's
I did get to play it yesterday for 4 hours.
Yeah, what kind of empire are you playing?
First time we did plants with the new budding, which increases your pop growth, and then the photosynthesis one, which turns half of your food requirement into energy. And then on top of that, I forgot what it was called. The new government edict that lets you build alloys for food.
Oh yeah, the I don't remember what it's called either, but I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So we're of course, we only use half of our food for our pops, and then we just turned food into alloys.
Oh, that's so strong. I didn't even think about that's a strong energy. Yeah.
Unfortunately, catalytic processing. Thank you, Agamade.
That's
what it's called.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we had a little hiccup in that we were pacifists, and every other person in the galaxy, we were xenophile pacifists, and everyone else in the galaxy was either militarist, xenophobes, or both. And of course, you don't get the techs. We got smushed because we were also right next to a militaristic Federation start.
Oh,
and of course, they have larger fleets because they have the Federation fleet.
Yeah.
They want it. Mm-hmm. We got steamrolled, so I started again. with human clones.
That's the one I'm most interested to check out because I want to see what their late game stuff.
I'm not sure,
are.
but you do get at least. I'm not sure if it comes every time, but when you're playing them, you get an archaeology event where you can study on your home planet, where you find a way to turn off your cloning needs.
Oh.
And return to regular biological reproduction.
Interesting.
But that apparently lowers your abilities.
Oh.
So do all of the leaders look exactly the same when you're playing as clones? Like, do they have the same portrait?
Oh, that would be cool.
I think they do. I was just playing with the humanoid tentacle chin dudes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to try that. I want to try that with like regular humans and see if everybody just exactly.
That would be cool, actually. I haven't had a chance to play this yet. I was going to play it later in the week with some friends, but
yeah.
What is interesting though is because you start with that, and because the way the cloning vats work, each cloning vat only supports 20 pops of your cloned people. So you only can build 5 of them because you can't recreate the technology.
Right.
So you're very limited on your original clones. Like that's only 100 of those pops that you can have anywhere in the galaxy, and you can only have them on 5 planets because that cloning vat is needed to support those 20 pops.
Okay.
Interesting.
We did sort of get around that, but we found a frozen space slug and cloned it and made slaves.
Oh, well, there you go.
To do a lot of our work for us.
Why not?
So that's actually working out really well.
Yeah. All right. Well,
yes, we have Tanya in chat confirming that they do all have the same portrait.
Oh,
nice.
Cool, brilliant.
I like it.
And Alfred is also confirming that.
Fantastic. Yeah,
this is the one that I'm looking forward to an awful lot. I do play a lot of Stellaris, and usually with people outside the company, so I always wait for the releases before jumping into these. And these civics look absolutely fantastic. I'm really looking forward to playing them.
Yes,
but it's
there's just something that has an enduring attraction to me in Stellaris about being an absolute asshole, pardon my language. I always play a mega corporation and do as much crime as I possibly can. I love crime. I don't know what it is.
It's especially fun when you're playing with friends, right?
Yeah, you heard it here first. Arheo, I love crime. Yes.
I do like playing as Megacorps. And even if you're not a criminal syndicate, you can really screw people over.
You can, but why would you not be a criminal syndicate if you could?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's fun to bend the law until it almost breaks, but it doesn't.
Well, they say, what is a baron but a band of robbers that has achieved legitimacy? What is a mega corporation but a criminal syndicate that has achieved legitimacy? So, yeah.
Definitely with you. Yeah, criminal syndicate is objectively way more fun, I find.
Of course, you can combine it with being a religious. What is it? Mega church, I think. That's always the other fun
called? A subversive cult or something. I think you get called or something. Pretty cool. I haven't done play through that yet, but for a while, I should say.
Yeah, I'm hoping I get a chance to boot it up sometime this week. I do have a regular multiplayer group, but we're in the middle of a long CK3 game right now, and then we switch back. We've been going back and forth between Stellaris and CK3 every time we finish a campaign. So
I do like this direction that Stellaris is going. They're just adding a lot more interesting sci-fi concepts, traditions, and origins. Because this is the aspect of Stellaris which I enjoy the most, I find.
Do you know? It's actually interesting that Paradox just did that this past week. I mean, yesterday, Tuesday, because with revamping old DLC for Stellaris. Because a week ago, EA did the same thing for an old Sims game pack. Spa Day.
Interesting. I like that a lot.
And they did the same thing. They added a big thing for base game, which is painted nails, and then they just expanded upon that for people who own the pack.
I like that philosophy a lot because we bought the base game and you keep expanding on the base game, but we also paid for the DLC. And if you keep expanding on the DLC, it increases the value of that DLC. So I like that a lot. Even though I know it's like, yeah, you don't want to add like too much content that not everyone's going to have access to, but in general,
expanding the DLCs, like past ones that came out years ago, encourages newer players who skipped over them to go back and buy them.
Right.
And you don't have to answer this, of course, Arheo, but if you don't want to, but is there any past DLC that you might that you would like to revisit at all? And
for any of the Paradox games,
I think for Imperator, we sort of did this already. We went back and we added content to the Epirus pre-release pack. And I think it's pretty good to be able to do that sort of thing. You're rewarding the people that already own it, which is fantastic for them. And I think you're also sort of bringing it forward to new audiences and saying, hey, it's actually more worth getting this now. It's a win-win for everybody, and it gives us a chance to either correct old mistakes, add things to stuff that would otherwise be hard to justify in terms of value. It's always good.
If there ever was a chance, I'd love to see some of the Together for Victory trees get a rework at some point. They're not quite up to snuff with some of the newer DLC.
Well, was the UK focus tree reworked after the fact, wasn't it, or was that part of the expansion?
I think that was more recent than TFV, I want to say, but I don't know.
Can't remember the chronology of it now.
Speaking of Hearts of Iron, since we actually have the author of this dev diary on the show, do you want to walk us through this week's Hoi 4 diary?
Absolutely. So we've just got a couple of small things in here. Yeah. You've noticed probably we've done a few bag of tricks dev diaries over the last couple of months. We're trying to include a fair amount of quality of life, smaller additions in addition to the pretty massive stuff that is coming. So today we have, Scorched Earth. Of course, you can't have a Soviet Union focus tree without blowing up some railways.
Yes.
So you now have the ability to do this to your own railways. This sort of sets them to a state of disrepair. And that sort of keeps, it stops them from repairing. Using your own factories, and eventually when they do get conquered, you can perform a sort of tactical retreat if you want, and whoever is pushing into your land is then going to have the job of repairing those instead. So it's pretty powerful tactically, and I think pretty flavorful for the.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. If I'm the attacker, is there any way to prioritize like railways in my own lands versus like railways that I'm of occupied places I'm running into, other than like just dragging them up and down in the priority list?
I believe they're placed at the top of the list.
Okay, gotcha.
At least that's the intention. So They will take priority over other repairs, effectively. These things don't take that long to repair, but it's a case of having to do it in addition to the fact that you also have to convert the railway to sort of simulate the different gauges that a lot of the majors would have used at this point.
You also mentioned that you toyed with the idea of letting people blow up their own factories, but it caused some balance concerns. What was the issue you ran into with that?
I think you can often end up being a little too punishing with these things. Yeah. Of course, what the Soviet Union historically did here wasn't so much blow up the factories, but often relocate the labor. That becomes a lot more difficult to do, I think, here, and it makes it very difficult to justify actually pushing into a country if they're just going to up and move everything behind the lines.
Yeah, I was thinking, especially say if you're playing France, just move everything to North Africa, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, Russia had like trains waiting to leave Moscow with all this industrial stuff on them. So yeah,
it's got an image of like a bunch of French engineers moving the Eiffel Tower to Tunis.
You gotta still get those culture tile bonuses for the Eiffel Tower, so you gotta move it somewhere else. Yeah, it's like I think that's like one of the most powerful wonders in Civ 6 actually, because it increases your appeal of every tile in your entire country or something like that.
I think so. Something ridiculous like that.
It's ridiculous, yeah. The fact that we have an Eiffel Tower makes every part of our country prettier.
As it should.
Yes,
yeah.
true.
I think every French person would probably agree to that.
The next one is something I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
The stuff about preferred tactics.
Yeah, so the preferred tactics thing was something we covered a couple of diaries ago. It's part of the staff officer core feature that we announced a while back. And I think when we announced it back then, it seemed a little bit lackluster, both internally and I think it was received the same way. So we've made some changes to it. It's more of a nudge towards the tactic that is chosen in a combat, and you can select that on a national level and say, hey, this represents our doctrinal strategies. If we're a school of blitzkrieg, then we're going to select overwhelming fire or breakthrough or blitz as a preferred tactic, giving us a sort of slight bump to be weighted in combats. Where we felt that wasn't very engaging was that it doesn't have much of a local effect. It's just something you choose once and then never go back to. So combined with the fact that we're also reworking characters a little bit, we've gone into a bit more depth here and said that once your generals and your field marshals hit a certain level at this point, I think it's level 5, they can choose their own preferred tactic from the ones you've unlocked. And again, this sort of simulates a lot of the tactical dogma that was very much a part of military strategy at this point, these schools of war and so forth. I've seen a few people saying that this might, having to choose it once and not be able to change it could be rather inflexible, but I think that's sort of the point of this feature. This is supposed to be a dogmatic choice. And of course, it's only nudging it in one direction. It's not saying that this, divisions using this preferred tactic will only ever choose one tactic. It's more that it's a slight weight towards preferring it, and you'll find that your armies tend to hit this instead of other things. It also adds an element of choosing the right general for the right job as well.
The aspect which I'm most interesting is basically how it makes you feel, sort of a role play aspect of it. I think too. Certainly, like thinking of Japan as a good example, I guess. If you're fighting in the Pacific, maybe it's not tactically sound, but it certainly would make you feel a lot more invested, I guess, when you click, I'm going to do some banzai charges in the Pacific theater. That would make you, it makes you a certain level of role play and I guess the fun factor, I guess, of doing that. But then you don't want that situation in China, I guess, because not banzai charges.
Yeah.
China, right?
I just like the idea of having generals that have a personality, and I can kind of guess how they're going to handle a specific situation.
And there's quite a lot of behind-the-scenes work that's gone on for characters, generals, advisors, country leaders, and so forth. We haven't gone into a huge amount of depth on that at this point. We'll probably cover it in one of the modding dev diaries because a lot of it doesn't really come out in the game. But there's been a lot of stitching together of systems behind the scenes. So leaders and advisors and generals are sort of the same system now. They're the same person with several different aspects.
Interesting. So,
right,
for example,
I guess that was mentioned earlier. Yeah, in an earlier.
So Mao, for example, I guess, who's be a leader and a field marshal and a general, and also leader of a country. I guess that's all weaved into. Which is pretty.
It has a lot of potential, certainly for modding, and of course the modding scene in Hawaii is huge. But also for providing links and content as well. You can have somebody who is an advisor here affect their abilities in doing something else somewhere else. They aren't these separate concepts in the code anymore.
Yeah.
And part of that is the preferred tactics. You can really attach yourself to a general who's got a reputation for doing banzai charges in the Pacific if you really want to.
Yeah. Or Mao with guerrilla tactics, or I guess changing command to North Africa. I guess.
Exactly.
I guess Rommel with the Blitzkrieg and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What would Monty be known for? I'm trying to think. What was his like?
Probably a nice cup of tea.
Cup of tea. Yeah. Logistics for the tea. For the tea, you see.
Yeah, he's really good at converting railways to make sure that the tea continues to flow.
History of the Great War in chat says delay.
Yeah. That works.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of jerry cans full of tea being shipped to.
Oh yeah.
Well, when you run out of fuel, what else have you got?
Exactly.
That's what those were full of. What did you think it was?
That's it. The Crusader tanks, all the British tanks were ran off tea, basically.
Uh-huh.
No diesel involved.
Yeah.
So after the preferred tactics, I think we covered one more thing, and that was the changes to strategic redeployment. This is one of those things where, being quite new to Hearts of Iron, I thought this was a fairly minor change, but of course it's the one that people wanted the most. It's the one they care the most about. And seeing the response to it, I can sort of see why it's fantastic to see people so fired up over something that seems quite small. But instead of your troops finding the quickest way as the bird flies to their target, now they will use the new railway system to redeploy, resulting in some of the images you can see before you, where they're using the railway system in as much as they can. But of course, it's not limited to the railway system. There's a series of weights in place that means that they will try and sort of compromise between the bird's eye distance and using the railways. So here they're going up towards the coast and then taking a bit of a shortcut across country.
Makes sense.
I like
it's
that.
Really cool. Yeah,
for sure.
And it certainly makes far more sense. As I assume the train lines are completely linked with tactical redeployment now, right? So you move faster along the train lines.
I'm curious if you agree with me from having actually played quite a bit of this, but I was talking last week about, with all the changes to weather and supply hubs and like strategic redeployment, like for land combat, this kind of feels like it's going to be the Art of War update for Hearts of Iron 4, the same way that completely changed how land warfare felt in EU4. It feels like this is going to completely change how land warfare works feels.
It's going to be very different. I will say it does feel very different. I think there are places where you will feel comfortable when you're fighting in Europe, and supply probably isn't a huge issue to you at the beginning. Maybe if you're fighting on the continent between 39 to 42, you've probably not got a huge amount of supply issues. If you start pushing into Russia, you're going to encounter a very different way of warring, basically.
And I won't be able to send 24 divisions from Ethiopia overland to South Africa anymore, presumably.
No, you're very limited in circumstances like Ethiopia.
Yeah.
It's a fairly knife-edge balance at the moment, and we're constantly tweaking that sort of thing to make it feel good. But the fact that there is a big supply difference to the old Hearts of Iron, I think is a really nice place to be.
It always constructs that, I guess. So, hope there's an achievement to actually complete Cape to Cairo. Pretty good. That'd be nice.
So I think
rather than preparing for war, I'm going to be building Cape to Cairo. I'm just going to do beam rail.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Why not? Yeah. Just,
what's a German menace? No. We gotta.
Who needs to fight in a war? We're here for trains. It's a train game. Yeah.
Basically, I'll play this like open TTD now.
Exactly. Well, I guess my most general question for you, Arheo, would be kind of what's it like making the transition from Imperator to Hearts of Iron, and what kind of led you to that spot?
It's very different. It's super interesting. I've always played Hoi. I played all the Paradox games fairly excessively. Hearts of Iron, I think, was the polar opposite to what we were doing on Imperator, though, so perhaps one of the more surprising changes for me. And I think some of the biggest differences are the expectations on procedural gameplay. In Imperator, it was far more of a sandbox, I think. You had any number of countries, tribes, republics, monarchies. and you could take the game in any direction from anywhere that you start on the map. You can turn into anything, you can do anything, you can see Rome rise, you can see Rome fall, you can assist in that if you want to. It was a lot more of a sandbox and a creative civilization builder, whereas for Hearts of Iron, it's sort of strictly the other direction. You have a very defined, limited time period in which you don't necessarily judge the success of a gameplay experience by the cool things that happen, but more about experiencing the war. It's I wouldn't say railroaded, but I'd say it's a lot more restricted in what you expect to experience.
Ironically, I guess. Very railroad.
Indeed. Pun not intended. But I think if you started Hearts of Iron and you didn't experience the Angelus, you would be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also wondering what's your overall vision, I guess, with, like you said, I guess Imperator is far more sandbox. So, like, what aspects of Hearts of Iron do you think is the most important gameplay and design-wise?
Yeah, and I was gonna, because you mentioned when Dan handed it off, a similar philosophy, and I was curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that what I did when I came onto Imperator was to fairly extensively rework a lot of systems. We took it in a very different direction. Mm-hmm. Whereas for Hearts of Iron, of course, it has a huge audience of its own. A lot of people expect the game to be a certain way, and they've had 5 or 6 years worth of content taking it in that direction. So I don't think from me that you will see any sort of vast departures from that. Certainly not in the immediate future. But in the long term, I think my own personality will probably find its way into Hearts of Iron. I tend to focus a bit more on the what ifs and a bit more on the procedural aspects to a campaign, but I don't yet know how that will manifest. I think a lot of what I'll be doing in the coming months and years will be figuring out how I see Hearts of Iron going.
You sort of, I guess, steady as she goes with a bit of touching, meandering, I guess, from a design point of view, seeing where the waters go. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Is it most of the same team, other than you, that's been working on it for a long time, or has there been other, refreshing of the whole team?
There have been a fair few internal movements, I would say, but there are still plenty of familiar faces who you'll probably start to see a little more of now that we ramp up things on No Step Back.
Another question I had for you too is where you see sort of balance between fun and realism, which I think is something that often gets discussed in the Hearts of Iron community, specifically around certain aspects of gameplay, I guess. Something I brought up a few podcasts ago was, I guess, the railway guns, which, as you probably know, didn't see much extensive use, but they are cool and fun, and they're in the game, and they're cool and fun in the game, but obviously weren't actually much of a big player in World War II.
Yeah.
And I guess from a focus tree point of view too, like the balance between fun and realism in the focus tree. Where do you set that limit? In the future.
Oh, that's a really difficult question. I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. One thing that still surprises me a little bit that I've already alluded to is the capacity for detail that a lot of our fans have on Hearts of Iron. You can change something like strategic redeployment in a tiny, minor way, and you've suddenly made everybody's day.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think attention to detail can go too far. At the core of it, we're a game, and if the detail or the feature that you're adding isn't fun, there isn't really a place for it. I think you can bend the rules a little bit, and I think we did that with railway guns. But it's a bending I'm happy to do because I think it adds a lot to the core gameplay experience, really. And railway guns really have their own niche. They're a prestige piece, if you will. I wouldn't exactly go so far as to say that they're particularly efficient to spend your factories building them for so many months, but
so would
they're
you
cool.
Compare railway guns to like the Bicycle Boys?
I guess it's similar, yes. They look far more impressive, I hope.
Sorry, the Rosebud has opinions.
Rosebud likes railway guns, I think, yeah.
Good.
I think
seal of approval.
I think
I love the idea that you can do something ridiculous if you want to, because,
Yeah.
Well, speaking of ridiculous, we do have Forza in chat saying that a uniform designer is absolutely vital.
Yes. I refer you to my comments on detail.
I want a medal designer. It has no practical application. You don't see in the medals where you design what colour the strips are for what campaigns, individually designing medals or something stupid like
Indeed.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, designers are a pretty core part of the game now at this point. When we have the ship designer, of course, from Man the Guns, and now we're on to the tank designer, also very popular. You can logically extrapolate where that might go next.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe airplanes. Maybe. Seems logical. I
mean, the ship designer is something I'm a huge fan of, and I guess the tank designer is in that merit. So I think it's pretty cool.
You can tinker with it for hours on end.
Oh yeah. And go make the most ridiculous tanks. I guess it's quite fun. Or
I thought it was things. To come back to your question actually on focus trees, particularly they're a conundrum. They're fantastic at providing a wonderful narrative path and for giving us the opportunity to tell fairly scripted stories. At the same time, they can be a bit limiting for. I think that the more elaborate stories you want to tell, the more risk you have of interfering with other game mechanics. Yeah. And I think one of the areas that we can improve in future is perhaps in putting a little more faith and a little more time into developing those core mechanics, and then integrating focus trees into those rather than the other way around. So I think if I could sort of give one way that I want to take the game, it's a little more in that direction.
Interesting.
That's really cool actually. Because often I think like carts before the horse, I guess, on many focus trees.
And of course, we will end up with a forum post tomorrow saying new Hoi game director wants to cut focus trees, which of course isn't true. I think they're fantastic. They really are a good way. And we added these to Imperator. I have a lot of faith in this sort of mechanic for telling stories. It's just a case of how far you let it go.
Yeah, I'm certainly in the club that likes it. It's the same with EU4, I guess, with mission trees. You get to build I know lots of people. Well, I think lots of people. I think it's a loud minority of people don't like mission trees and don't like focus trees, but the ability to have not only a narrative but a direction you can work towards. That is like, say you're going a monarchist route as Russia, I guess, and you want to be making a sort of pan-Slavic empire, be a direction you'd be going in, and it allows you to change focus different game through different playthroughs, right?
Well, it's not just the narrative. It also gives you bonuses and such, like events that would happen in real life are then turned into game mechanics.
Yes.
I think at the core of it, it's a lot more about telling you what has happened or telling you to achieve something rather than telling you why something has happened or how it happened. I think that's the one thing that you tend to miss when you're using a structured narrative like focus trees or missions. That's, of course, it's a big deal. You can't sort of add that retroactively to a game, I don't think, but it's part of my philosophy at least.
What do you normally find yourself playing, whether it's for testing or just for fun off hours? What settings do you play with? What countries do you like playing as? Any mods?
I have a soft spot for minor powers. If I'm feeling like I want to do my job, I will play the United Kingdom and spend all my time organizing things. But I think for relaxation, it's probably something in the Baltics or maybe one of the Commonwealth countries.
That still ends up being my favorite a lot of the time. Is just play like New Zealand, and I just have a few really good volunteer divisions that I just send around to try to change the tide of battle in specific flashpoints. That's always
being part of the war experience, I think, is just as engaging as being one of the driving forces in it.
And being able
it
to
depends on what you want to do, of course. But
Yeah, I think one of my most entertaining games in Hoi 4 was a multiplayer where I played Belgium and they played the Netherlands. Where one thing was where we could never fight against each other unless it was the factions fighting.
Yeah.
And so we had very small armies the whole game that we just got to micro.
I think the Netherlands is one of my favorite experiences in Hoi, just for the diversity of play throughs that it offers you.
Yeah, and those amazing submarines that you get to. They're actually wonderful. And I think that experience is going to be quite improved by the new ability to build in allied terrain, right? Because I think one of the most frustrating things about playing a minor is you find yourself marching through major territories, and often they are not building their infrastructure up into a point where they can. Being able to invest in your allies, I guess, will help a lot.
I think so. And this became absolutely necessary with the supply system as well. Being able to make sure that the supply lines are as you want them when you're using AI allies, I think is necessary.
Fortunately, you have made one of my comics completely obsolete, as often Paradox does, very inconsiderately patching out problems in your games.
Well, we read them all and we think, how can we annoy Father Loris today?
Yeah, exactly.
How can we retroactively make this comic not make sense? This 8-year-old comic or something.
Yeah. The real fans remember when Fenmark was actually
We'll take some questions from the chat too if you've got any, but I've got a question. It's organically with this new expansion, has there been anything interesting that you would not expect as a result of reworking supplies? I was thinking maybe in the Chinese theater or something. Does China get bogged down? Does Japan get bogged down in China now because of a logistics problem? Is battles in Africa less significant? Is there anything organically that just happened synergetically, I guess?
It's very knife edge balancing right now. And we're not to the point where we're happy with the balance state, but it does tend to swing either way depending on the changes we make on a fairly regular basis at the moment. I'd say that's usually a good sign because it means we're nearly there. It can be a little harder to push into areas without many supply nodes. For example, China, inland China is particularly difficult for Japan to get into, but they tend to do fairly well on the coast, which is probably fairly realistic.
Yeah,
it's what you want. It's generally looking pretty good. Of course, there are always outliers. The Ethiopia war, I think, was one of the more long-standing issues, with coastal supply having much less range than inland supply nodes. So Italy tend to get as far as the mountains and then get very sad and stop.
I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense actually. Yeah, because I imagine might be able to struggle in that situation. This is why you need Cape to Cairo, right? That's
exactly.
Could be Italians.
But I think the main experience we're going for with the supply system is, of course, Barbarossa. And that's been the focus of most of the balance work we've done, and I think that's feeling pretty good at this stage. You can take advantage of it if you know how in the right ways. At the same time, it plays out fairly historically if you leave it alone.
Yeah, and I guess from going back to sort of how you play the game, I guess I imagine the impression I got is the focus is more pushing towards up the supply lines. So pushing into Kiev would probably have a lot more value that a lot of players do is just rush for Moscow, I guess. But now, are those points a lot more important, I guess, securing?
They can be. You'll find it's a lot harder, I think, to eventually push it into a capital area. The supply in those tends to be a lot higher. So directly just spearheading your way to Moscow isn't going to do you much good, I don't think, unless you've sort of planned around it and you've probably got several vectors of attack.
Which makes sense, which is pretty good, right? Yeah.
All right.
Do we have any questions from chat at all?
Chat.
Let's see.
Chat, do you have any questions for Arheo? Remember,
obviously,
he has
can't
the
talk
right
about
to say he can't say stuff.
Yeah, we can't talk about unannounced features or what the next DLC is going to be or anything like that. But,
which is a shame. I'm so itching to ask you about potential redesigns of a peace conference system, which I know every single marketing person and you would hate me to ask, so I'm not going to ask it.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So. Mordred just showed up with 106 Vikings. So,
the Vikings have questions for you.
Oh,
you never answer, or you're in trouble.
Vikings,
they'll want Scandinavian focus trees.
Scandinavia and South America are the two areas I'm looking forward to getting focus trees in the future.
Yeah, well, I was most looking forward to the Soviet Union.
Considering Paradox is a Swedish company, it feels like we should have a Swedish focus tree at this point.
It is like the longest game it feels like they've ever gone without adding any content to Sweden.
9 different paths on how to stay neutral.
Yeah, exactly. It's the neutrality
says Italy when?
I think that's
I think that falls under can't answer.
Well, I did come from Imperator Rome. They had to bring in an expert,
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Did they ever say in a previous dev diary whether or not that was on the table? Because I'm not asking you if it is. I'm asking if they've said in a previous dev diary already that it was something they were looking at, but you might not have read all of this. So
the ParadoxCon, we covered some things that are on the radar.
Okay, that must be where I heard about it. Yeah.
So we've acknowledged a few things that we definitely want to do in the future with no particular timeline, but we wouldn't be mentioning them if they weren't important to us. And that included the peace conferences. You'll be happy to hear. It included the Italian focus tree and a few more things which escape me at this point. But you can probably find that somewhere on our forums if you want to check it out.
Yeah, those are always really good. The point panels are always really. I always like
agree.
watching those. Yeah.
I got a question about the focus trees, I guess, especially some of the new ones, I guess. How do you make the decisions for the alternate history, I guess? For example, restoring the monarchy, I guess, the Soviet Union. How do you make the decisions of who is going to be the Tsar? What is the path that is going to go towards that? How do you make these decisions in general as part of the design process?
I think it's probably a question better posed to our content designers. But the instructions I tend to give for that sort of thing are that these need to be plausible, not necessarily a binary. This almost happened. I think that's one of the misconceptions that is often applied to focus trees. We don't necessarily have to find a turning point in history and say it could have gone that way. We're going for what makes a fun story. So historically plausible is probably good enough for me. A lot of these things you only see if you turn off historical mode, which I admit I do 50% of the time just because I like to see the world burn.
Yes, same.
Yeah.
It's always good
watching
fun.
the world burn.
Indeed. And of course, it results in wild, ridiculous scenarios. But I think having some level of you can go in any direction for a country is probably a good start for that sort of player. And a lot of our players like that non-historical mode. But of course, the core experience is historical mode, playing through the war. And those paths don't have much relevance to that unless, of course, you want to go in and just have a what-if scenario.
Yes, yeah. No, I tend to agree there, I think. I think a good example would be, I guess, Japan having, a communist path, and completely impossible in real life, pretty much, but having that sort of... But, it's built up to have a sort of hint of plausibility as it's going down that.
Well, that's something we discussed previously, was we wondered, or we had thought that since the Soviet Union is getting a fascist tree, it feels like we should have gotten a democratic one too.
Yeah, that was something that was very requested. But I think already we've reached the point where the Soviet focus tree is the largest tree in the game. It's taken up a huge amount of effort, and we have to sort of put our resources where they make most sense.
Yeah.
And
why did you end up going with fascist, which is kind of the opposite of what they did historically, versus democratic, which there was a little bit maybe more historical precedent.
I think it's largely expectation. The fascist paths, as I understand it, were more similar to the other path represented in that branch, which is the Tsarist
Gotcha.
path. So it felt more of a natural addition alongside that.
I have to say, I do like how the historical paths were really really fleshed out with some really innovative game mechanics. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying I absolutely adore the Stalin paranoia.
That's one of my favorite. That is one of my favorite things that has ever been added to Hearts of Iron is the Stalin paranoia meter.
Yeah,
that was inspired. Yeah,
I think this is probably one of the first expansion packs where the most fun, interesting mechanics are actually part of the historical path. I think looking at Germany, I guess the more interesting one from my perspective is returning the Kaiser, I guess. But I think I'd actually play as Stalin quite a lot now, I imagine, because that Stalin mechanic seems great.
Absolutely, and I think the alternate communist path is also, it makes a lot of sense because it's probably the most historically plausible.
Yes,
scenario at that
for
point.
Sure.
And
so giving that the more attention made sense.
Yeah, that was I guess a conscious design decision to flesh out the communist paths, I guess.
Yes.
Because I think in the past, I guess like with the Kaiser, I guess the Kaiser is probably a lot more fleshed out than the historical path in Germany.
We have a question from Zowblaze in chat. Are there any major changes that you personally championed for that are now in?
Let's see. No Step Back development began before I joined the Hearts of Iron team. So, in short, no. This is mostly me safeguarding the design that Dan began. Of course, I've had a hand in a lot of how it's shaped, but I would say in terms of features, there's nothing that I've personally championed at this point, and you're likely to see more as we go forward. I had a bigger hand in shaping more recently the supply system and the staff office, the officer core mechanics there, though.
Yeah, it's, I particularly enjoy that system. I do like with the roleplay element, I guess. I know he's playing as Britain. Although it's just a button you press and you click, I'm gonna go Bomber Harris now. That felt
Absolutely.
good then, but now we've got the staff system. I think that's that feeling of I'm doing a Bomber Harris going to be a lot more impactful. I guess you've played it. I guess. Did you find that that you become more invested in particular characters and the development and the staff system?
Beginning to. I think there is more work to be done there, and this is very much setting the groundwork for adding more involvement to characters and maybe a little bit more personality. I mean, it's not going to become Crusader Kings. That's not what this game is about. This is a very strategic, tactical war game. But that doesn't mean I think that you can't have some level of personality from the people that you interact with. They're not just stat modifiers. But I don't yet know how that's going to take shape.
Like Bomber Harris, get a load of Bomber Harris memes flashing up on the screen.
I just feel like I want the big, like the Ninja Turtle memes, just like the cowabunga it is, but you press that and it's like, yeah, shit's getting real now.
Do we have any more questions from chat before we start wrapping this up?
Yeah, I don't want to keep the Europeans up too late. Even though Father Loris, I don't think ever sleeps.
No.
No.
Sin never sleeps.
And Lambert, they never sleep.
No.
Which, speaking up, if you missed Lambert, he fell into DJ's black hole and is streaming Stellaris over on the Steam page, which is having a huge sale going on this week. If you don't have Stellaris,
Stellaris is free to try until this weekend or something like that.
We don't have a referral code. Let's not do this. Come on, let's get our referral codes first before we do that.
Okay.
Stellaris
That's
is free to play for 4 more days. But I mean, we're supporting Lambert. Go watch Lambert.
We're not. No more advertising sales until you give us a cut. Come on. No.
But yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, do you have any closing statement, I guess? That's probably not the right word, it sounds like. But
I don't have a SoundCloud, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Well, it's always the future.
Maybe when the Italy rework comes out, you'll also get Arheo's SoundCloud, maybe. Get some,
that's a deal.
Yeah.
A more militarized version of like the funicular song, do 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 do, but in a sort of a war march.
Oh yeah, fantastic. So Loris, what have you been up to this week?
Bit of DIY, bit of drawing, about it. Same as last week, really.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my birthday too, so I just spent.
Mine as well. I think we have the same
September
our
babies.
Birthday same week, so
we got the full knowledge that our parents conceived us over Christmas. As
those of you that and those of you that follow astrology, that probably explains a lot. I'm not a big believer myself, but people do tell me sometimes, "Oh yeah, you're Virgo." Okay, yeah, I could see that. So
that makes me a Virgo, I assume too. I don't actually know.
I think so. Yeah. It's supposedly like the fact that I'm very like particular about stuff.
We're both virgins.
Yeah, and that too. Let me see. Rose, I know you have not had time to game this past week, but you did mention you played some Stellaris. Is there anything else going on?
Yeah, hold on. Let me let the Rose out. 1 sec.
Yeah, no worries.
He's gonna go out and bother his appa.
There we go.
I've been out of town for the past 2 weeks. Though I have been still playing Stardew Valley multiplayer with Pat Adams, though he was streaming to my channel, which is an interesting feature.
Nice.
On Twitch. But I plan to finish the Stellaris campaign I started yesterday over on Twitch. Possibly tonight, probably not, more likely tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But that's it. Probably some more Humankind, because I'm still kind of addicted to that game.
It is very good.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to play Arheo? Humankind?
I haven't yet. I do want to play it very much.
It's very nice. The combat especially is very good.
It's kind of addictive.
I'm not sure I have room in my life for another addictive game.
Yes.
Yeah. That's given your whole job is revolves around making games that people play for thousands of hours.
Hours. Made the terrible mistake of like taking a lunch break and thinking, "Oh, I'll just play EU4 for half an hour," and it ends up being 2 hours. Good stuff.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
What have you been up to, Liana?
Right, yeah. I can't talk about what I'm working on right now. It's not directly strategy game related, but I'm doing a pretty big video project that's pretty exciting for a major video game news outlet. I'm not sure when it's going to be out, but it's basically my full-time job for the month of September, which is good when you can get that as a freelancer. When you can get someone to be like, yeah, we're basically going to pay you a contract to be a full-time employee for this length of time. So I've been extraordinarily busy getting out episodes up on SoundCloud, the backlog that we have at this point. I'm hoping by the end of next week. For those of you that have mentioned that to me on Twitter, that's my deadline I've sort of set for myself. What have I been playing? Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous is what I've mostly been playing in my free time, which does have kind of a strategy layer to it. You're leading a military campaign on top of this, classic CRPG type thing. It has a turn-based mode, which is great. CRPGs should all have turn-based modes. I don't like real-time battles in games that have more than 3 or 4 party members, because it's just chaos. It's impossible to manage. So that's me. Till Folkfong on Twitter. Won't really have anything publicly to talk about for a while, probably. Yeah, Age of Empires 4 will be the next thing.
Oh yeah,
pretty sure I'll be doing some stuff with that in October. But
that existed.
Yeah, it's supposed. I mean, if it doesn't at this point, it seems pretty late for it to get delayed. So
that was something we didn't mention. Yeah, Warhammer got delayed.
Which I was fully expecting, and I'm glad, because a good delayed game that's good. Nobody remembers it was delayed, as Shigeru Miyamoto said. A bad game that was released too early will be bad forever. So, although that's not necessarily true anymore, as evidenced by Imperator Rome. Although I wouldn't say it was bad at release, it definitely got a lot better afterwards.
Yes, so. I suppose that's a question I wouldn't mind asking. We're dragging out too long. How do you think COVID has affected game development in general this year? Because it seems to be a lot of delays all around, right?
I think game companies are putting on a very brave face and pretending it hasn't really affected us all that much, whereas the reality is it has. It is starting to get worse. But I think most of that is due to it affecting people a lot more. There's no sort of inherent difficulty. We've gotten used to the communication aspects of things, but people themselves are being a lot more personally affected by lockdowns in various countries. They're being personally affected by not being able to get out there and see people. There's a lot more mental health issues, that sort of thing. So I think that is the main cause behind this. There isn't some fundamental issue that hits only IT or game development itself. It's a people thing.
I think
that's going to be socially something I think we're going to be unpacking for a long time.
I was chatting to people from a few games companies. I guess the impression I got is, without casting a sort of broad brush, people involved in game development sometimes need to be pushed outside of their social comfort zone to go meet people, I guess, a lot more. I think certainly sort of stay-at-home lack of sociality, I think, is I certainly know a lot of people suffering from mental health issues in game development. They go to see
a lot of developers tend to be introverts.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with a lot of game developers being younger, possibly they aren't married yet, they don't have kids yet, if they're going to, and you have them, but they're successful enough they're living by themselves without roommates, and without going to work, you cut out all of that interaction.
Do you find that at all? That ring true? Is that
I tick nearly all of those boxes. So yes, very much so. I'm definitely a fairly introverted person, and of course the first couple of months, maybe even a year, you're like, this is heaven. I can just live in my cave and I can be myself. But at this point, it's too much, I think. everyone has a universal need, I think, for some sort of human connection.
Well, that's the thing.
Social animals,
Introverted,
right?
you still need human connections. You just don't need as many, but the ones you do need are more meaningful.
Right.
Someone who's extroverted needs those 5 or 6 very meaningful connections, but then they need like 100 less meaningful. With the introverted, you don't really need the less meaningful ones.
Yeah.
I think I find that people tend to focus a lot more on things that didn't matter to them before, that now do. There's a lot of sort of doom spiraling going on.
Yeah, I find that
it's a shame
from other people in the game.
Yeah,
from the game industry, I guess. I think that's a common symptom. I think from outsiders, I think people make the assumption that people working at home. I think this all really suits introverted people, but it comes with those problems, right?
Yeah. Well, if you are...
This is the mental health cast now. I guess it's quite nice to talk about these things, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago, when my parents divorced, my father's very introverted. He's a developer, not in games, but other stuff. And so even at work, he didn't have a lot of social interaction with people. And then he moved to a city where he only saw my sister and me every other weekend. He didn't know anybody. It started to affect him, and then he found EverQuest. And that became his social group meeting and doing guild and stuff. This was back in the late 90s. But
well, if you're stuck at home still and aren't feeling great, we'll be here every Wednesday to come hang out with. And once again, thank you, Peter, for coming on the show, and looking forward to continuing to talk to you about your ongoing role as the person that is brought in to carry the torch for various grand strategy games.
I'm very looking forward to it.
Maybe someday we'll get to see what a day one from the first brick Arheo game looks like. I think I'd be very interested in that.
Yes, definitely.
Someday.
Yeah.
And the problem is, you did such a good job on reworking Imperator. You're the rework guy now. That's
it. I'm typecast.
Yeah. Stop being so good at your job. That's a problem.
Yeah. All right. I can just go to every game and turn them into a civilization builder from now on. So sorry, it'll be pops in Hoy.
Yeah. Well,
that's going to be a forum, friend.
We did it. We got it.
We get pops everywhere. Lambert will be happy when he emerges from the black hole. Remember, if you're watching this live right now, you can go check him out on Steam. But we're out of here.
Yeah.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Lovely.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Ciao.